Okay, big question today. How can we cope with big changes in our life? Also, how can we adjust and learn from those changes? Fortunately, the student left their name on the paper, and I was able to get a more specific uh, type of change that was going on. I kind of figured that if someone wants to cope with changes in their life, it's not going to be something like, I just won $5 million in the lotto and I don't know how to deal with these changes. I have all this food and this big new house and I just don't know what to do. And like I assumed, I was right, and that is not the problem. I got a more specific answer, and they said, no. Having fork in the road changes, things that you don't have control over. They affect you, so just learning to accept them. So that is why I am not focusing so much on how to deal with change, but more suffering in general. I remember learning in one of my psychology classes, when we had to define stress, we defined it with one word, and that was change. And so I will be talking about suffering in general. With that said, there are basically three basic ways that suffering can come about in your life. One is you're living in like a lot of sin. If you're a drug dealer and you find yourself surrounded with people that you just can't trust, and the cops are busting into your house and you just don't understand why. Life is so tragic. I don't get it. Why do I keep going through all these problems? Well, you're a drug dealer, and this this type of situation where you're living in sin that's obviously going to cause problems is not going. This video is not going to be addressed to that type of problem. So, type of suffering number 2. Sometimes we flat out don't know what's going on. If you read the story of Job, this dude loses all of his animals, and he even loses his kids. And the whole time, like, his friends keep telling him it's because he was living in sin, and then eventually God comes to him and says, no, it was what I wanted. It wasn't because he was doing anything. Or he tells the friends that it was because he wasn't doing anything wrong. So sometimes it's just a mystery, and we don't know what's up. Third time is, the suffering can just be undeserving. It might even be because you did something right, and so you're getting called out or persecuted for it. So this webcam response is in response to situations number 2 and 3, mystery or undeserving. Alright, I'm going to read John 16:33. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Anytime you go through problems in life, you are left with a choice on how to view the situation. You can either become bitter, you can become angry, you can become mad at people or the world or whatever it is. Or you can become sanctified, which is a really cool word, sanctification. It is basically going through troubles and then being more and more patterned after the character of Jesus. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. A friend of mine had a relative that died recently, and I felt bad for him. I had sympathy. The thing is, I haven't had a close relative of mine die. I didn't have empathy. I hadn't been in his shoes. I didn't know exactly the pain he was feeling, and it was kind of hard to relate and counsel and help him out. The thing is, not that I want this to happen, but if I had a relative of mine die, I would know his situation. I would understand his problems. I would be more compassionate. I would be more empathetic. And I would be able to help him out. And basically that's sanctification. When you go through problems, it's like a learning process. It helps you to become a more compassionate person. Alright, you might think of suffering as the worst thing that can happen to you. People tend to complain when it's 5 degrees too cold in their house. Truth is, not knowing Jesus is the worst thing that can happen to anyone. I'm going to read Philippians 1:12-14. And the setting of this is Paul is writing from jail. Now I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. Because of my chains, most of the brothers in the Lord have been encouraged to speak the word of God more courageously and fearlessly. Okay, this guy is writing from jail, and he's not complaining about where he's at. He has joy because he's suffering for the right reasons. I mean, you can even look at Jesus. The crucifixion was such a painful, tormenting process that they created a word for it. If you've ever heard the word excruciating, that was made specifically for the crucifixion because it was such a higher degree of pain and suffering. And I mean, you look at what did Jesus say? He's not up there like, I'm gonna watch you all burn. I can't wait to be in heaven. Ah, no, it's like he feels bad for them. He has compassion. He's like, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. You know, when you're suffering for the right reasons, it's you can have joy. You can rejoice in that. You know, back on that verse in Philippians, you got to figure like Paul's not complaining and he's in jail. Now maybe you are metaphorically chained somewhere to a desk at work or to a desk at school. It's not that you are stuck there. It is God has put you there, and that is your chance to be a witness. Paul didn't complain about being in jail. Paul saw opportunity. He saw Christian brothers around him and his guard, and he knew that, you know, talking to the guard, that might influence who the guard is talking to, and then it can just go on and trickle down. So, you know, wherever you're at, that is opportunity. Alright, this is a timeline. We're going to pretend you're going to live 100 years. So you got like 36,500 days of life. Okay, now each of these little lines I'm drawing represent like days of struggle, of strife, of problems in your life. And we'll say this part, there's like just 10 years of crap in your life and you couldn't take it. Okay, if you take your entire life and you compare it to eternity, here's eternity's timeline. That's probably the worst drawing I've ever seen in my life. Like, this is your life compared to eternity. It is like such a small chunk of what is to come. And actually, technically speaking, this shouldn't even be here. Eternity doesn't stop, so it just keeps going and going and going and going. Like I said, it's not that this illustration is just going to necessarily, like, you know, you just think about this, oh, compared to eternity, oh, I don't have that, life's not that long, blah blah blah. It's not that easy. It's just try and stay eternity focused. Revelation 21:4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. I mean, whatever you're going through life, whatever it is, I promise you it will come to an end, whether it's in this life or the next. And I mean, whatever you're going through, it's okay to like mourn. It's okay to be sad when you're going through hard times. I mean, you look at the story of Job, and in chapter 2 it says that his friends came to him and they sat with him for 7 days. They didn't even talk. They just flat out sat there because like he was just in so much pain. And those are good friends though, you know, they were just there for him. And maybe they've been through hard times like Job was, and they knew there was nothing they could say. They waited, they talked after, but just for 7 days they just sat there and they comforted their friend. And you know, it's a good example of a good friend. You don't even necessarily have to be a good counselor, just simply being there for them. And especially when you go through hard times in your life, that's when you can learn. That's when you become more compassionate and you learn, like, you know what it's like to be in emotional stress or physical stress or emotional pain, whatever it is. Alright, I'm going to finish with this. You look at the story of Saul, and what happens is Saul's persecuting Christians, and Jesus comes down, and he's like, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And the thing is, Jesus had already ascended. He resurrected and ascended into heaven, yet he still says, Saul, why do you persecute me? The thing is, like, Jesus isn't just some distant God that's just, you know, he's sitting up in heaven and he's just like, oh, deal with your own problems. No, he's a God that feels our pain, that shares our pain. He has suffered. I mean, they made a word for the crucifixion. Excruciating. It was just that bad because Jesus has suffered that much. You know, it makes him that much more sympathetic and empathetic. He knows pain. He knows what it's like to suffer. All right, 4 big points to sum this up. 1, remember that you will suffer. The question is whether you will suffer well, and that's all on you. Hopefully you can learn from whatever you're going through, or, you know, whether it's now or later on in life. 2, try and keep eternity in mind. Don't forget that whatever you're going through, it will come to an end. 3, think of it as working out. It sucks now, but it will make you stronger in the end if you want it to. And 4, you know, be a witness. Show others how different the life of a Christian is, how, you know, you have a different hope. You see things differently. Don't act out of revenge or retaliation or anger, but instead, show compassion and show love like Jesus did.